Hello, honors, A&P. I am here today with your brief notes on some diseases and disorders of our urinary system. And then on Monday, we will do a review, and Tuesday is going to be your guys' test. So try not to introduce any new technology to you guys. So I haven't done very many labs. There's virtual things we could do online, but everyone's technology access is a little different or a little wonky. So that's why I've kind of avoided these things. But I do have something that you guys can do on Google Forms and analyze and do a little bit of analysis of what's in some patient's urine, and then maybe diagnose some common diseases and disorders from that. So that's what you guys are going to do today. It is going to be a lab grade in the grade book. We have not had any of those in a while, so because we have fewer lab grades and more homework assignments, this will be kind of weighted slightly more, or it'll at least hold more value. So be sure that you do this assignment. Because it's you'll notice a larger shift in your grade if you don't. So I guess what I'm trying to say. All right. So when you guys open up the assignment today, you're going to see these two pictures. And I don't want to give too much away, but what you're looking at here, part of the assignment is to identify what parts are A, B, C, D, and E of a nephron. So we're looking at a nephron here. And so based on all of our analysis that we've done, you should be able to figure out, notice the arrow coming in, and what is C. And notice that these tubes, even though it's all in black and white here, notice that they are separate. And then you're going to use this key and figure out what molecules are in the different sections of the nephron here. And this one's just an example of what a normal healthy nephron would be doing at all of the different phases and stages of filtration, secretion, and reabsorption. Then on the next page, you guys are going to view this. And these are different patients, A, B, C, D, and E. Their samples essentially of the urine. So this is really showing the collecting duct, this end piece here. And based on what molecules you're finding inside these collecting ducts could be indications of certain issues that your patient might be suffering from. Urine is a really simple thing for doctors to use to diagnose certain things because you don't even have to get stuck with a needle. You just are going to urinate in a cup, and they can run some basic tests to find out what's in your urine. And hopefully your urine has just in it the bad stuff that you want to get rid of, and none of the good stuff that you want to keep in your bloodstream. So if you have some of the good stuff in the urine, there's a signal that things aren't working properly in your urinary system. All right. I guess I didn't have this flow in properly, but that's okay. You'll figure it out. So this is sort of where you might want to take these notes down on a separate sheet of paper. There is a little bit of space on page 6, but I do have 2 slides worth of terms and definitions for you. So you could probably fit it maybe on page 6, a little bit on page 5 as well. There's page room on the front, or just a separate sheet of paper is fine as well. So this first slide are different terms we use in talking about what's in the urine or conditions of your urine. So polyuria are just different versions of urine. We've got normal healthy urine, which should just have in it those waste products, urea, uric acid, creatine. It'll have water in it. It'll have excess salts and ions in it, and any drugs and toxins that you're trying to get out of your body. This is why when people are doing drug tests, they test your urine, is because your kidneys, if they're doing their job right, they're getting rid of those toxins. So that's where urine tests for drug tests come into play. So all that bad stuff should be in your urine. If they find good stuff in your urine, it might be an indication of one of these. So these are just definitions, and you'll notice many of them end with urea because that's in referring to urine. So here's the different terms we're going to go through. You don't really, you can write them down as I discuss each one. And since it's on the board, I'm going to jump straight to the middle here. So I forgot to have this little fly in, but dysuria, okay? Dys is in like, oh, dys, I'm going to dys that, that's bad. Dysuria is painful urination. If you are urinating and it is painful, that is an indication of usually an infection or inflammation of your urethra. And so it's really, really common, like with a UTI, bacteria infection of your urinary tract. Now, that's just when you're trying to urinate. If somebody had kidney stones, the passing of that kidney stone would be very uncomfortable, but it's just that slow process, because remember, peristalsis actually is moving urine from the kidneys down to the bladder. And so this is different, though, from dysuria. All right, micturition. This is the fancy word for urination. Why they don't just call it urination, I don't know. But to micturate is to urinate. They kind of rhyme, if that helps you at all. Anuria, right? So as in like, and again, that means like no, right? There's that other prefix that means no. This is when you fail to produce urine or fail to produce the normal amount of urine. Which is kind of between like a half of a quart to at most usually 2 quarts in a day. And so somebody producing less than that is likely suffering some kind of kidney disease. Could be a lot of different things, but basically it means that your kidneys aren't functioning as they should. And one major thing, and this was the notes from Thursday, is having high enough blood pressure to filter out is super duper important. So if your blood pressure is low because of some other health issue you're having, you might be experiencing low urine production. And that's a bad sign, because that means all the toxins are still in your bloodstream and you're not urinating them out. So it's important to urinate enough. All right, so we already went over dysuria, painful. Hematuria, think of that prefix hema, you should think blood. And so this is when there is erythrocytes, red blood cells, in the urine. So you'd be basically like, your urine would look a little pink because there's red blood cells in there. This is a sign that you are urinating out blood, and usually a sign of trauma. Could be infection, okay, inflammation, and sort of ruptured blood vessels in your kidneys too. I talked about like a kidney shot, like boxers and stuff, if they get hit sort of in the back, or I don't know, you fell off a horse or something, you landed on your back, something, right, kind of on these like bottom ribs region. It could be a sign of damage to your kidneys. If you also had a bad infection, that'd be a sign of that too. But pink urine, not a good sign, okay? Bilirubinuria means that there's bilirubin in your urine, which is something that's produced through your liver, and it's actually one of the bile pigments that we find and kind of gives that green color that bile has and that we associate with our gallbladder. Now, if somebody has hepatitis, that would create this kind of greenish hue in their urine. And so that's an indication of hepatitis, which is inflammation of your liver or other liver issues. And so that would be a sign of that. This one almost literally tells you what's in the urine. Proteinuria, protein in the urine. Protein is good stuff. We want to keep good stuff in our bloodstream. And we're not, usually you can't filter out protein anyways. The protein in the blood is too large in that first step in the glomerulus to be filtered out, and red blood cells are too large to be filtered out. So any of those getting into the filtrate is a bad sign that your filtration process is not working as it should. However, there are a few things that would cause this to happen. Somebody who is being more physically active than they normally would might experience that, so it's not always a bad sign. Pregnancy is sometimes associated with this as well, but it could also be a sign of something a little more scary, like heart failure or hypertension. So it could mean nothing, or it could mean something not so good too. You'd probably be experiencing a number of other conditions, okay, If you feel great and you feel fine and your heart is working fine and your blood pressure is fine, maybe you're just being more active. And so that's why you're experiencing proteinuria. But hypertension, remember, is high blood pressure. And so issues with the heart. And basically that high pressure is forcing the protein out because it is so high. All right, glycosuria. It almost has the name in there, glucose. This is sugar in the urine, glucose. Urine actually smells a little bit sweet when this is the case, and it is associated with diabetes mellitus, which is kind of the common diabetes that you're familiar with when we talk about diabetes 1 or 2. So basically, if you have diabetes, there's too much sugar in your bloodstream, and so your body is going to get that good stuff is now becoming bad stuff, and so you're going to urinate it out. You don't normally want to urinate out glucose, so that's a signal that there's an issue with your pancreas and your insulin production. And then pyuria is when you have leukocytes in your blood, so white blood cells. And remember, our white blood cells fight infections, so this can sometimes be also associated with the UTI or other kind of infection, bacteria infection of any kind. So if there's leukocytes, or remember, when our leukocytes die, they turn into pus. Okay, pus is just the dead bodies of our white blood cells. And so there's kind of a pus-like milkiness to the urine. That's another indication of a UTI or some kind of infection. Okay, so these are just conditions of the urine. What you would actually be looking at if we were doing urinalysis in the lab, we'd be looking at this and kind of seeing, like, does it look a little pink? Is it milky? Does it smell sweet? These are all things that you can determine something's wrong with the urine from this. Now, as I said, some of these are associated with different diseases. So our next slide here, right, is going to go through some of these urinary system diseases and disorders. So here's our list we're going to go through. You can write them down sort of as I cover them. So diabetes mellitus is the typical diabetes you're familiar with. We mentioned diabetes insipidus before when we did our endocrine system. This one is the extreme thirst disease, and it's associated with a lack of production of ADH, antidiuretic hormone. So antidiuretic hormone is what retains your water in your body. So if I am not making ADH, my collecting ducts are soaking out all of my water. And so my urine becomes very diluted, meaning very watery, super duper watery. I'd urinate and it would be almost clear, soup, like if you've just drank tons of water and you urinate a lot, it'd be like that, but every day, but you are extremely thirsty. You can't drink enough water because you're getting rid of it. And this is very, very dangerous because you end up becoming dehydrated and causing all other issues because of that. So they're incredibly thirsty, urinate a lot, anywhere in the range of 3 to 20 quarts of urine a day. That's like urinating all day long. It is not diabetes as you are familiar with it. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it has this name because it has to do with the urination frequency, which is another sign of diabetes, the regular one, mellitus. But other than that, they have nothing to do with each other. Diabetes insipidus has nothing to do with sugar. It's just frequent urination because of excess water secretion by your bloodstream. You can't retain it because of ADH. Now, diabetes mellitus is caused due to high blood sugar, and then that excess sugar makes its way to the urine. You urinate it out, and you would end up with glucose in the urine. UTIs, urinary tract infections. This is bacteria. It's really common. E. coli is the most common one that causes this. And it's more common in females than males because the lengths of our urethras are so much different. So males, because the urethra passes through the penis, it's going to be a lot longer, okay, somewhere in the range of like about 8 inches, whereas females is maybe 1.5. So if bacteria gets in that tube, and it's a mucous membrane, remember every hole in our body is a mucous membrane. that bacteria infection can travel up and get into the bladder. And then this is where you might have painfulness associated with the bladder. You might have pus in the urine because your white blood cells are trying to fight this off. It's incredibly treatable with antibiotics. Some females experience recurrence with this. It just has to do with sort of their own biochemistry. It is associated with sexual activity. And just FYI, for you gentlemen, you may not even be aware of this, but your reproductive structures, right, share a common pathway, but females, right, are different. And then we've got our digestive tract and the anus at the end. So with females, it is very, very, very important that they always wipe from front to back, because if you wipe from back to front, you are basically taking that excrement from the digestive tract, okay, your feces, which is full of bacteria, and pulling it forward into the reproductive tract as well as the urethra. And that's where a lot of infections can occur. So just if you gentlemen ever have a daughter, okay, and you are changing diapers or teaching potty training, it's very important you teach them to wipe from front to back, because you don't want to get the bacteria in those front structures. Okay. And anyways, if a female is doing all of the hygienic things that she's meant to be doing, still UTIs are super duper common. About 40% of females get them frequently. And so there's like cranberry juice and other preventative things you can do, but I've got friends I know that just suffer from it all the time. And it's uncomfortable. Right? It does cause painfulness when urinating. All right, the renal calliculi, fancy word for kidney stones. You've probably heard of kidney stones before. What a kidney stone is because we are urinating out a lot of salts, calcium, magnesium, ions, things like that. What can happen sometimes is that those ions, those salts sort of clump together and get crystallized and form what we call kidney stones. And then the only way to get that stone out is for it to pass through the urinary tract, which it'll go down from the kidney to the bladder through the ureter, and then it has to go from the bladder to out of the urethra. Now, females, this is the benefit of having a shorter urethra. That painfulness would be much shorter lasting than males, which is going to be longer for it to go through. But they have treatments nowadays to try to help and minimize the size of those and break apart the kidney stones, instead of just having to forcefully wait for that painful peristalsis to happen, the pushing of that stone out. And so they basically use ultrasounds to like vibrate those little stones, and hopefully it kind of pulverizes them into little sand, and then you can excrete out kind of the salt, not in a big clump or stone sort of a way. But if somebody's prone to kidney stones, their doctor's going to tell you to drink lots and lots of water. It's the best way to prevent it. Incontinence, okay? This is the nice way of saying, right, you can't hold in your urine, right? We've got like some muscular issues. So young children who aren't potty trained are known to be incontinent, but it happens later in life too. So it happens when your pelvic muscles, those sphincter muscles that hold in your urine, are weakened. And it can be weakened through age, right? As young children, it's weakened just simply because their nervous system isn't developed enough to know how to control that sphincter to keep it closed. But also pregnancy can weaken this as well. And so, especially right after pregnancy happens, kind of the trauma essentially of passing the baby through the birth canal, these muscles have to regain some strength. And so there is like physical exercises, if you've heard of Kegels, that strengthen those pelvic floor muscles, and things like that to make it a little bit stronger. They also, some things like laughing, okay, right? Sometimes people might have a wee bit of incontinence because of laughing and things like that. It's just this the sudden pressure of like your muscles contracting forces on that. And so incontinence is very common. Pretty much all of us will experience that as we get older in life because our muscles just simply get weaker down there. And so, Depends, and all those adult diapers are meant to help out with that. Then the last one, polycystic kidney disease, or PKD. There's a variety of different ones, but many of them are genetic. Some are autosomal dominant, some are recessive, right? So you can inherit it, both parents, things like that. But we're going to talk about those. And then there's like cancers and things like that that could be a cause of cysts on the kidneys as well. But what happens is that there's fluid-filled cysts that develop on the kidneys, and those cysts can inhibit the nephron's ability to filter out structures, and so causing issues that way. All right, that's it. Your lab assignment, you might have to try it a few times to figure out all of the answers and information, so it's editable. And so go back through and try it a few times and message me as always if you have any questions, and then enjoy your weekend. Have a good one.